Hi everybody, this is Jess Waldman. Today I want to take an opportunity to present about the cultural iceberg model and how it relates to my work today. So the cultural iceberg model is something that I identified just a few months ago when we started this intercultural communication course. This model has probably been the most powerful thing that has guided me in my work over the past few months. So first, let's take a little bit of time to look at this model and understand what it's trying to represent. So here you can see the photo of a triangle and a blue line. That triangle is to represent the iceberg created by Edward T. Hall, and that blue line is representing water. So when we look at this, we see a breakdown of behavior, beliefs, values, and thought patterns. Some of these sections are shown above the waterline, while others are shown below the waterline. The external or conscious part of culture is that piece at the tip of the iceberg. That's what includes the behaviors and beliefs. The internal or subconscious part of culture is below that line. It's a piece of beliefs and values and thought patterns. There's some major differences between these two pieces of culture. Though we're seeing culture as a whole in this photo, the top and the bottom are very, very different. So the top are the external pieces of culture. When we think of culture, this is typically the piece that we think of. These are pieces that are explicitly learned, they're conscious, they're easily changed, and they're met by objective knowledge. So somebody's behaviors, we often see certain behaviors from certain individuals. For example, I have some clients right now that are refugees from another country. I obviously won't be able to share a ton just because I don't want to break that confidentiality, but I am going to share some very important pieces of my journey with this family. So a few months ago, I started with them and they were so wonderful and so excited to get some early intervention for their child. Of course, there was a bit of a language barrier, but with time and with a translator on the phone, we were able to more easily communicate with one another overall. So one of the things I noticed going into their home were some of their behaviors, right? So when you walk in the door, you're greeted by them at the door. You are taking your shoes off by their side. You're offered a snack. You're offered tea. Something that I don't see a lot at the other homes I'm in. So these were pieces that I was able to identify immediately and adapt to immediately. I knew going there, I was going to wear, my fuzzy slippers inside. I knew going there, I was probably going to get a really delicious tea, and I was going to say yes, and I was going to say thank you. These were pieces of their culture that were relatively easy for me to adapt to and for me to identify. Now, there's also that piece below. Values and thought patterns. That's the internal pieces of their culture. So these pieces are usually implicitly learned, unconscious, difficult to change, and due to subjective knowledge. So these are the areas that I couldn't necessarily see with my own bare eyes. For example, they have values around family. So a lot of them don't send their children to school until age 7 or 8. With this family particularly, even beginning early intervention was a little bit of a stretch. So what I learned through that is they really value those early years with their children. They feel as if they can play the biggest role in their life rather than a caregiver or a teacher. And this was something I didn't learn about them until discussions happened, until they let me into a little bit of what their culture looks like back home. So this was a really beautiful piece of internal culture that at first I might have said, oh, that's odd. Why would we wait so long to send your child to school if they're developmentally delayed? But learning about their culture, that's so powerful, and it made so much more sense as to some of the decisions that they were making. So in this model, one of the things that Hall suggests is that this analogy of culture is important because the internal pieces of culture cannot be learned unless you actively participate in that culture. So when I was originally thinking about participating in a culture, I didn't really know what that looked like. But now it's easy to see that even through my line of work, there are different ways that I can participate in this culture. There are different ways that I can connect with families and not only learn about who they are, but learn about why they are who they are. So this model really teaches us that we can't just judge based on the things we see, right? It was easy to see that they were very kind and very supportive and very giving. Those were the things I could see with my eyes. And then below, there's like meaning and value behind all these things that I'm seeing. So it's really important that we're not judging a culture just based on what we can see, but also based on all those pieces that we can't see. So the most important piece that we take out of this whole thing is that when someone first enters a culture, only certain behaviors are apparent. As one spends more time in that culture, underlying beliefs, values, and thought patterns will be uncovered. So if you truly want to begin to understand another culture, take a dive into that culture.